Beyond the neon horizon lies a place where the past and the future finally meet in a burst of light and color. Join our journey into the unknown as we explore the stories of those who dared to cross the line. Click subscribe now and follow us toward the next big revelation.
On my birthday, my son-in-law said, "Go wait in the lobby, Dad. We'll handle the paperwork." That was 3 hours ago. I'm 71 years old. I've built houses with my hands, raised 2 daughters on my own after my wife passed, drove the same truck for 19 years until it finally gave out. I don't rattle easy. But sitting in that lobby at Sunrise Ridge Care Center in Kelowna, watching the automatic doors open and close for strangers, I felt something I hadn't felt since the night Patricia died. I felt erased. They'd taken my wallet, my phone, my winter coat. My daughter Renee had smiled when she lifted the coat off my shoulders. "It'll be warm inside, Dad. You won't need it." She smelled like the perfume I'd bought her for Christmas. I remember thinking, what a strange detail to notice. What they didn't know was that I hadn't taken the pill that morning, for the first time in 7 months. Drop a comment. Where are you watching from? Have you ever had a moment where you trusted someone completely and then suddenly everything you trusted collapsed at once? I want to hear from you. This story contains dramatized elements, but the lessons are real. Let me tell you what happened. It started the way these things always do, quietly, with kindness. My younger daughter, Renee, had moved back to Kelowna from Vancouver 18 months earlier. Her husband, whom I'll call my son-in-law, had taken a remote job. They needed space, they said, and my house on Lakeshore Road had 3 empty bedrooms since Audrey moved to Ottawa. So I said yes. Of course I said yes. Renee was my daughter. You don't say no to family. The first 2 months were good. We ate dinner together. My son-in-law fixed the Avastros without being asked. Renee planted tomatoes in the side garden, the way her mother used to. I thought, this is what I was missing. Company. Warmth. A house that felt like something again. Then in the spring, I started forgetting things. Small things at first. I left the kettle boiling twice. I showed up at my buddy Norm's place on a Thursday thinking it was Saturday. I called Audrey by Renee's name once, and I saw her face change in a way I didn't like. Not hurt, exactly. More like filing something away. Renee took me to a doctor. Not my regular doctor, Dr. Whitfield, who I'd seen for 16 years. This was someone new. A specialist, she said. Dr. Crane, neurology, out in West Kelowna. The appointment was quick. 30 minutes. I don't remember much of it. I was tired that day, I'd slept badly, and the drive had been long. Renee had done most of the talking. On the way home, she told me what Dr. Crane had said. Early-stage cognitive decline, possibly vascular dementia. He prescribed something to slow the progression. That night she gave me the first pill. Small, white, oval. She set it on the edge of the bathroom counter beside a glass of water. "Dr. Crane says you need to take this every morning, Dad. It'll help." I took it. I trusted her. She was my daughter. By August, I was sleeping 12 hours a day. I'd wake up, and the morning would already be half gone. A thick fog sitting behind my eyes that didn't lift until early afternoon. I missed 2 appointments with Norm. I forgot to call Audrey on her birthday. I got turned around driving home from the lake, a road I'd driven 10,000 times, and ended up parked outside a strip mall in Rutland, not sure how I'd gotten there or how long I'd been sitting. My son-in-law came to get me that time. He was patient. Too patient, I'd think later. "It's okay, Dad. It happens. We're going to take care of you." He put his hand on my shoulder, and I felt grateful, which embarrasses me now. What none of us talked about, what I barely let myself think, was my wife. Patricia had died of a stroke 7 years before. Sudden, no warning. One evening she was washing dishes, and the next morning she was gone. The doctors called it a massive cerebrovascular event. I'd been standing right there when it happened. I thought about her more as the fog thickened. Thought about the last year of her life, how Renee had started coming around more, cooking for us, bringing things, how she and Patricia had spent a lot of time together that final year, how I'd been grateful for that too. I pushed the thought away. What kind of man thinks that about his own daughter? Then came November, and the day Renee told me about the trip. Quebec City, she said. Christmas markets. A long weekend, just the three of us, her and my son-in-law and me. She'd already booked the flights. She was so excited, she said. She'd always wanted to go. And I was touched. I genuinely was. I hadn't traveled since Patricia died. I said yes before she'd even finished the sentence. We drove to Kelowna Airport on a Friday morning. Cold, clear, one of those December days where the whole Okanagan Valley looks like it's been pressed flat under blue glass. My son-in-law carried the bags. Renee held my arm walking through the parking lot. Roads are icy, Dad. Let me help you. At the terminal, she sat me down in a row of seats near the departure board. The vinyl was cold through my slacks. Wait here a minute, Dad. We need to sort out the boarding passes. The kiosk was giving us trouble. She smiled. My son-in-law touched my shoulder briefly as they walked away, their rolling bags clicking on the tile. I watched the departures board. Calgary, Toronto, Vancouver, Montreal. I looked for Quebec City. I couldn't find it. 20 minutes passed. I thought maybe I'd misread the board. I thought maybe they'd gone to the bathroom. I thought a lot of things, the way you do when you're starting to understand something and you don't want to understand it yet. 30 minutes. My hands were in my lap. I reached into my jacket pocket and felt the small Ziploc bag I'd put there that morning. The pill I hadn't taken. I'd been awake since 4 a.m., lying in the dark listening to the house. And something had made me decide. I don't know how to explain it exactly. Call it a voice. Call it Patricia. I just hadn't taken it. I'd slipped it into the bag and put it in my pocket and gone downstairs and eaten toast and said nothing. By the time the fog that morning had lifted, it was different from all the other mornings. And I'd sat there in the kitchen and understood with a terrible clarity what had been happening to me. No boarding pass in my pocket. I checked. Renee had said she was holding all the documents. Easier that way. My wallet was in her purse. She'd taken it for safekeeping at the house, said she'd put everything together in one place so we wouldn't lose anything at security. No luggage, either. I'd watched my son-in-law pull bags from the trunk. I'd counted without realizing I was counting. 2 bags, not 3. My overnight bag hadn't come out of the car. The sliding doors opened. Families came through. A man in a Calgary Flames toque. A woman with a baby strapped to her chest. An older couple moving slowly, helping each other with their bags. No Renee. No son-in-law. I stood up. My knees ached. I walked to the information counter. The woman behind the desk had short red hair and a kind face. Her name tag said Fiona. When I asked if she could check whether Renee Calloway had checked in for a flight, her expression shifted, professionally careful, the way people look when they're deciding how worried to be. She checked. Then, she checked again. 2 passengers had checked in for flight AC-8771 to Montreal with a connection to Quebec City. Renee Calloway and her husband. No third passenger. The flight had already moved to final boarding. My daughter was going to Quebec City. Without me. The seat they'd told me about. The seat for me. It didn't exist. Fiona was already reaching for the phone. I put my hand up. Not yet, I said. Let me think. She waited. I sat in the chair she pulled out for me, and I thought about the pill in my pocket, about 7 months of fog, about Patricia's face the last evening she stood at the kitchen sink, about the way Renee had lifted my coat off my shoulders that morning like she was already claiming something. And then I thought about Audrey. I asked Fiona if I could borrow a phone. Mine was gone. Renee had said the battery was dead. She'd plug it in for me on the plane. Fiona handed me hers without hesitation. Audrey answered on the second ring. When I told her where I was, she went quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "Dad, don't move. I'm calling you back in 2 minutes." She called back on Fiona's number. Her voice was steady, but I knew my daughter. She was scared. "There's something I need to tell you," she said. "About 6 weeks ago, Renee called me. She said you'd been getting worse. She said you'd started having episodes, that you'd accused her of stealing from you, that Dr. Crane thought you might need supervised care. She asked me if I'd agree to... She stopped. She asked if I'd agree to a power of attorney arrangement. Temporary, she said. Just until you stabilized. My chest went cold. I told her I'd think about it, Audrey said. But something felt wrong. The way she was talking about you. It didn't sound like you. I didn't sign anything. I should have called you. I'm sorry, Dad. I should have called. I told her about the pill. About the morning. About the 2 bags and the boarding passes that didn't include me. Silence. Then, I'm booking a flight right now. You stay with whoever's with you. Don't go anywhere alone. Fiona had called airport security while I was on the phone. A man named Officer Tran arrived, calm, unhurried, the kind of man who's seen most things. He sat across from me and listened to all of it when I took the pill out of the Ziploc bag and set it on the table between us. He looked at it for a moment and then nodded, like I'd just confirmed something he'd suspected. They called a paramedic. A young woman named Daphne, who couldn't have been older than 25. She checked my blood pressure and my pulse and asked careful questions. When she asked how long I'd been taking the medication, I said 7 months, and she and Officer Tran exchanged a look that I still think about. Daphne took the pill for testing. She drew blood. If there's a sedative in your system, she said, we'll find it within 48 hours. Officer Tran made calls. By early afternoon, 2 things had happened. First, Renee had contacted RCMP in Kelowna and filed a report saying her elderly father with cognitive decline had wandered away from the airport. She was, apparently, worried sick. Second, the results of a preliminary screen on the pill had come back. It wasn't a dementia medication. Daphne showed me the name. I won't try to spell it out exactly, but she explained it clearly. It was a sedative, a strong one, the kind used for anxiety and sleep at doses well above therapeutic range. You don't have dementia, Daphne said. I sat with that for a moment. 7 months. 7 months of fog and confusion and getting lost on roads I knew and forgetting my older daughter's birthday and feeling like I was disappearing. And it was a pill. A pill my daughter had placed in my hand every morning. I didn't cry. I've only cried twice as an adult, when my father died and when Patricia died. But I sat in that small airport security office in Kelowna and felt something move through me that I don't have a clean word for. It wasn't quite rage. It was closer to grief. Audrey arrived that evening. She'd taken the first flight out of Ottawa, connecting through Toronto. She walked through the doors in her work coat, still pulling her carry-on, and when she saw me, she made a sound I'd never heard from her before. She dropped the handle of the suitcase and hugged me, and didn't say anything for a long time. Fiona had stayed 2 hours past the end of her shift. When she finally left, she pressed a card into my hand. Her sister-in-law, she said, was a lawyer in Vernon who specialized in elder law. Call her Monday morning. Tell her I sent you. We stayed that night at a hotel near the airport. Audrey sat across from me at the small table by the window, and I told her everything, not the condensed version, the whole thing. The months, the fog, the appointments I didn't remember, the trip I'd been excited about that apparently didn't include a seat for me. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she said, Dad, I need to ask you something. What happened to Mum's things? Her jewelry, the china she kept in the cabinet, the insurance policy. Did you ever talk to Renee about any of that? I hadn't, or rather, I had, but I couldn't remember the conversations. In the fog, whole conversations had dissolved. Audrey opened her laptop. She'd been doing things while I was talking. I could see it in her face, the tight focus. She'd called a financial advisor friend. She'd looked things up. Patricia's life insurance policy, $180,000, had been settled in 2017. The beneficiary had been me, but the following year, I'd apparently signed documents adding Renee as a co-beneficiary to several accounts. I didn't remember signing anything. I had no memory of it. Renee was at the house a lot that year, I said. Yes, Audrey said quietly. She was. We sat there for a moment with what that might mean. Here's what I want to say to you. If you're watching this and you have a parent who lives alone, or an aging relative who seems to be declining, isolation is a tool. Confusion is a tool. The person doing this to me wasn't using violence. She was using paperwork and patience and a small white pill. She was making me into someone who needed to be managed. And she was doing it slowly enough that nobody looked too closely. I'm telling you this because I almost didn't survive it. Not because she would have left me in the airport forever, but because if I'd gotten on a plane, if I'd taken that pill that morning like every other morning, I would have been placed in a care facility in a province where I knew no one, with no wallet, no phone, no coat, and a diagnosis of dementia that I didn't have, and I would have spent the rest of my life wondering why my mind had failed me. I might not have lasted long wondering that. The lawyer's name was Christine. We met her that Monday in her office in Vernon, a small, sharp-faced woman with reading glasses on a chain who'd been practicing elder law for 22 years and who, when I finished talking, set down her pen and said, "Mr. McKinnon, what was done to you has a name, several names actually, and most of them are criminal. I want to be clear here because I have to be careful about what I say. The investigation was ongoing. There were things I knew and things that were still being established. But Christine laid out what the evidence showed. The medication wasn't prescribed by any neurologist named Dr. Crane, currently registered with the BC College of Physicians. We checked. There was no Dr. Crane. There was a clinic in West Kelowna, but the records from my supposed appointment were either missing or had never been filed. Renee had obtained the medication through other means. Christine didn't speculate about how. That was for the police. The financial piece was worse. My son-in-law, it turned out, had lost a significant amount of money in a series of bad investments going back 2 years. They were in debt. Serious, mounting debt. The kind of debt that makes people do things they'd never have considered otherwise. Christine's investigator found it in 3 days. It wasn't hidden well. My house on Lakeshore Road was worth $740,000 in that market. My retirement savings, my RRSP, the remaining insurance proceeds, together it came to just over $1 million. In my state, confused and compliant, I had apparently been maneuvered towards signing documents that would have given Renee increasing financial control. The power of attorney push to Audrey, the one Audrey had refused, that had been the next step. I had not been confused. I had been made confused. Audrey took 2 weeks off work. We stayed at a hotel in Vernon, close to Christine's office. Renee kept calling. My son-in-law sent emails to Audrey. Worried father, they said. Vulnerable adult. We only want what's best for him. The language was careful and consistent, which told me they'd talk to someone about how to frame it. What they hadn't counted on was the pill in my pocket. What they hadn't counted on was Fiona. What they hadn't counted on was me. Christine filed for an emergency protective order. It was granted within 48 hours. No contact, no access to my accounts. A financial hold was placed while an investigation was opened. Then the blood results came back. Daphne called me directly with Christine's permission. On a Tuesday afternoon, I was sitting at the hotel window watching the lake. She went through it carefully. The sedative compound, the same one in the pill, was present in my blood at levels consistent with months of regular ingestion. She used the phrase, chemically induced cognitive impairment. She said it twice, in case I needed to hear it twice. I did. The RCMP investigator assigned to our file was a woman named Sergeant Moreau out of the Kelowna detachment. Efficient, no nonsense. The kind of person who asks one question at a time and listens to the full answer before asking the next one. She interviewed me twice. She interviewed Audrey. She interviewed Norm, my friend who I'd been canceling on, who said he'd noticed I seemed different this past year and had mentioned it to his wife. She interviewed the pharmacist at the Lakeshore Shoppers Drug Mart, who confirmed that none of the medications in my name matched what had been found in my blood. Renee and my son-in-law were interviewed too. I wasn't there. I don't know exactly what they said, but I know that the story shifted From worried about Dad's decline to we were just trying to help to something that started sounding, Christine told me, like my son-in-law was beginning to point fingers. Audrey asked me once, in those first weeks, if I'd seen it coming. Any of it. If there'd been a moment where I had felt something was wrong and looked away from it. I thought about that for a long time before I answered. I thought about the year Patricia died, and how Renee had come around so much in the months before. How she'd asked questions about the will. How Patricia had said once, almost in passing, that she thought Renee had changed since marrying him. I'd told Patricia she was tired, she was unwell, she was reading things into nothing. Patricia had not been reading things into nothing. I'll tell you something that took me a long time to admit. Part of me had been grateful for Renee's attention during those months I was foggy. Part of me had been relieved that someone was managing things I felt like a burden. To Audrey in Ottawa, to Norm and his wife, to anyone who had to repeat things for me or drive me somewhere. The fog had made me small. And Renee had kept telling me she was there. She was helping. She had it handled. That gratitude is what makes this kind of thing work. It depends on gratitude. It depends on not wanting to be difficult. The case moved through the system over the next months. I won't walk through every detail. Some of it is still before the courts, and Christine has been clear about what I can and can't say publicly. What I can tell you is this. The charges were serious. The process was slow. The evidence was, in the end, more than enough. Audrey went back to Ottawa in January, but she called every night. We talked about everything. About her mother, about the years when we were young and life was simple. About the things I'd missed while I was foggy. She said she'd noticed changes in me over the summer, but hadn't pushed, hadn't wanted to imply she didn't trust Renee, had told herself it was grief and aging and normal decline. I should have come sooner, she said. You came when I needed you, I said. I moved back into the house on Lakeshore Road in February after the protective order was in place and Renee and my son-in-law had vacated. Christine had advised me to have someone with me for the first few nights. Norm and his wife, Pat, offered without being asked. Pat made soup and didn't make a fuss about it. I was grateful in a cleaner way this time. The house smelled like the shampoo, like someone else's life. I walked through each room slowly, checking what was still there and what wasn't. Most things were there. The china cabinet was intact. Patricia's things were still in the closet where I had kept them. I hadn't been able to move them and I wasn't ready to yet. The photo albums on the shelf in the study, her recipe cards in the kitchen drawer, handwritten, the corners going soft. I sat at the kitchen table that first night and I didn't feel triumphant. I want to be honest about that. I felt tired. I felt sad. I felt the particular sadness of being 71 and having learned something about human nature that you can't unlearn. But I also felt clear. I felt like myself. In April, I saw Dr. Whitfield, my actual doctor, for a full assessment. He sat across from me and went through everything methodically. Memory tests, physical examination, blood work, the works. When he was done, he looked at me over his glasses and said, Gerald, based on everything I'm seeing, you don't have dementia. Your cognition is age-appropriate and improving. What you experienced was the result of prolonged medication misuse. He was angry. Not at me. I could see it in the set of his mouth. He filed his own report with the college and with the investigation. I told him about the pill I'd kept, the one in the Ziploc bag that morning in December. He nodded slowly. That decision probably changed the trajectory of your life, he said. I thought about why I'd made it. I still think about it. I don't have a clean answer. Some part of me, even through the fog, had been keeping score. Had noticed the dates on the calendar that didn't match the ones Renee mentioned. Had noticed the way conversations ended when I walked into a room. Had noticed that I was always given the pill directly, never just pointed toward the organizer. You put this in your mouth, Dad. I watch. Good. Some part of me had been paying attention even when I couldn't access it, even when the fog was thickest. I want to talk about Audrey for a moment. She's 53 years old. She works for a federal department in Ottawa, something to do with infrastructure and policy. She's precise, practical, not particularly sentimental. When she was 12, she negotiated a higher allowance by presenting me with a written proposal, itemized. Patricia thought it was hilarious. I thought it was the best thing I'd ever seen. After all of this, Audrey did something I didn't expect. She started a private Facebook group for adult children of seniors in BC. Just a small thing at first. A place to share resources, talk through concerns, ask questions about medical and legal rights. By June, it had nearly 400 members. By September, 1,000. She wasn't trying to build something. She was just trying to make sure other people had the information she'd had to scramble to find when her father called her from a borrowed phone in an airport. I don't know what I deserve. I made mistakes too. The biggest one was choosing comfort over instinct, over and over again, because instinct was uncomfortable and comfort was easier. I'd seen things that didn't add up, and I'd added them up differently to get a number I could live with. But here's what I know now. I know that isolation doesn't always look like isolation. Sometimes it looks like someone bringing dinner and saying, "Let me handle the appointments, Dad, and you just rest." I know that confusion can be manufactured. I know that the people most likely to exploit an elderly person are the people closest to them, because closeness is the access point. I know that the people doing it often believe at some level that they deserve what they're taking, that they've been waiting for it, that the alternative is worse for everyone. I know that none of that makes it less of a crime. I moved out of Kelowna in the fall, not far. I'm in Peachland now, a smaller town 20 minutes south along the lake. Same water. The mountains are the same. I kept the house in Kelowna. I'm renting it for the time being, waiting to decide. Audrey thinks I should sell it. I'm not ready yet. My new place is smaller, a rancher on a quiet street 2 blocks from the waterfront. I have a routine again. I drive to the bakery on Thursday mornings. I meet Norm for coffee on Saturdays. I've been sleeping 7 hours a night, real sleep, the kind where you wake up and immediately know where you are. Last month, Audrey flew out for a long weekend. We drove the Crow's Nest Highway east to Osayus and back, the way we used to with Patricia when the girls were young. Audrey bought a bag of peaches at a roadside stand, even though they were late in the season and not particularly good. We ate them on the hood of the car looking at the lake, and I thought, this is what I almost lost. I'm telling you this story because I know there are people watching who recognize it. Not the specific details, maybe, but the shape of it. The loved one who's suddenly in charge of the medications. The decisions being made a little faster than feels comfortable. The appointments you can't quite remember. The sense that the ground has shifted slightly. That you're not quite tracking. That the fog that comes in the morning isn't quite lifting. If you're an adult child and something feels off, push. Ask to see the doctor yourself. Ask to see the prescription bottle. Ask to meet the specialist. Ask the hard question even if it makes dinner uncomfortable. If you're a senior and something feels wrong, trust that. Write it down. Hide the note somewhere only you know. Call someone outside the house, if you're both. If you're living this. If you're sitting somewhere right now thinking you're alone in it. You're not. Leave a comment. I read them. I stood at Patricia's grave on the anniversary of her death last June. I've done it every year since she passed, but this year was different. I had the lab results with me, the toxicology report, Dr. Whitfield's assessment. I stood there in the long afternoon light and I thought about all the things that didn't add up in that last year of hers. The year Renee had come around so often. The year Patricia had told me something was wrong, and I told her to rest. The investigation had not gone there. It couldn't go there. Too much time, too little remaining evidence, too much that couldn't be proven. Sergeant Moreau had been honest with me about that. I stood at the grave anyway, and I said out loud to no one, and to Patricia and to myself, I believe you. I'm sorry I didn't say it sooner. Maybe that's the thing I most needed to do. Maybe that's where the story was really pointing all along. Not to my survival, though I'm grateful for it. Not to the charges, or the protective order, or the prescription that didn't exist. Maybe it was pointing here. To a cold morning in June in a small cemetery in Kelowna, a man standing with his hands in his pockets and the mountains at his back, saying to his wife, "You were right. I hear you now. I'm still listening. If this story moved you, drop a 2 in the comments. If you know someone who needs to hear it, please share it. Elder abuse is invisible until someone shines a light on it. You might be the light that someone needs." God bless you, and take care of each other. I've thought a lot about what made any of this possible. Not just surviving it, but seeing it clearly enough to act. And the honest answer isn't dramatic. It isn't one big moment of courage. It's smaller than that. It's a Tuesday morning at 4 a.m., lying awake and deciding not to swallow a pill. That's it. That's where the whole thing turned. There's a cause underneath every effect, and if I trace this one back far enough, I end up somewhere uncomfortable. I trusted easily because I wanted to. I looked away from the things that didn't add up, because adding them up correctly would have cost me something. The version of my family I needed to believe in, the version of myself that wasn't a burden, the version of my life where the people I loved were who I thought they were. I chose comfort over instinct again and again, and that choice had a cost. I'm not saying I deserved what happened. I'm saying the path was paved with decisions I made, and I have to own that if I want to learn anything from it, that's what I'd call the moral piece of this. Not guilt, not blame, just honest accounting. What did I do and what did it lead to? Because the moment I stopped asking that question, I stopped being able to protect myself. The intelligence piece is different. Intelligence here doesn't mean being clever or educated. It means paying attention to what's actually in front of you rather than what you want to see. My body was telling me something was wrong every single morning. The fog. The exhaustion. The way my thoughts slipped sideways when I tried to hold them. I explained it away because Renee had an explanation ready, and her explanation was easier than mine. Real intelligence, I think, is the willingness to sit with the harder explanation when the evidence points there. I wasn't willing to do that. Not until something in me, some quiet stubbornness I can't fully account for, made me hold that pill in my hand instead of swallowing it. And then there's the matter of holding on, of not giving up on yourself, even when you've been made to feel like there's nothing left worth holding on to. Audrey coming through those airport doors. Fiona staying 2 hours past her shift. Norm, who'd noticed something was off and hadn't known how to say it but had remembered, had been ready to say it when someone finally asked. Those people didn't rescue me. I had to be willing to be found. I had to make the call. I had to put the pill in the bag. I had to stay present enough in the fog to count 2 bags instead of 3. Gerald, the man I was before any of this, would have said he wasn't the kind of person things like this happened to. He built his own houses. He raised 2 daughters. He drove the same truck for 19 years. He didn't need managing. That man was wrong about what vulnerability looks like. It doesn't announce itself. It comes in quietly, wearing the face of someone who loves you, carrying a glass of water and a small white pill. If you take anything from this, take that, not fear. I'm not asking you to be afraid of the people who care for you, but stay curious. Stay present. Keep one eye on the small things that don't add up, because small things are where the truth lives before it gets large enough to see. I'm still here. I'm still paying attention. And that, after everything, feels like enough.